And out of dust, God creates the first man, Adam, and breathed into him the breath of life.
It's no news that the search for the Garden of Eden has been on for centuries. Mankind's curiosity has led not one or two, but various archaeologists and teams of scientists to set out looking for the biblical garden of the first man on Earth. After many years of trials, failures, and dead ends, one man and his team have finally found the Garden of Eden. Who is this successful explorer? Where did he find this historical site? And what terrifying remains has the ancient garden become over the years? Well, brace yourself, because we guarantee that what he just found is nothing at all like you would expect. Dr. Smith has spent many years studying old books and scrolls that hint at the Garden of Eden in hopes that they could help trace his search to it. He first found a cave in northern Iraq, and inside the cave, there were many tunnels underground. After days of scouting and walking through these tunnels, he and his team of scientists ended up in what they believe is the Garden of Eden. What they saw inside the cave was a view that Dr. Smith and his team will forever remember. Inside, there was a high waterfall and lots of bright green plants and fruits. They knew right away that this cave was different from any other they had seen before. The plants were not like the kinds you see around or on the internet, and they looked very similar to the surreal, extinct plants described in the Bible. They also found very old objects in the cave that could have been there when the Garden of Eden existed. What's more interesting is that Dr. Smith isn't the only one who claims to have found the Garden of Eden. David Rohl also has a theory about where the Garden of Eden might have been. He thinks that the land of Eden was actually a huge area mentioned in ancient Sumerian texts. They called this area the Eden, which means plain or steppe. According to Rohl, this place was located north of Mesopotamia, beyond the Zagros Mountains. Rohl believes that the Garden of Eden was situated in a long valley in the east of Eden, to the north of the Sahand volcano, near Tabriz. In his report, he points out several geographical similarities and names of places he thinks match the biblical description of the Garden of Eden. For example, he mentions the four river headwaters, the Tigris, Euphrates, Gaihun Aras, and Uizun. Rohl also identifies the mountain range of Kush-e-Dag as the land of Kush. He also mentions Upper and Lower Nokti, which he believes corresponds to the land of Nod. Archaeologist Joel Kramer has also been on an exciting adventure, trying to understand the book of Genesis and find clues that might lead him to the Garden of Eden. His main focus has been on locating the river Pishon, as described in Genesis chapter 2, verses 10 and 11. Kramer believes that finding the river Pishon could be the key to discovering the Garden of Eden. After carrying out a lot of analysis and research, Kramer identified the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula as a promising location for the Garden of Eden. This region has always been abundant in precious resources. He noticed something that many others had overlooked. The river Karun in Iran connects to the two rivers mentioned in the Bible. This led him to consider the possibility that the river Karun could be the Gihon described in the scriptures. While two of the four rivers mentioned in the Bible are easily identifiable, and the third can be inferred logically, the river Pishon has proven to be more challenging to locate. But Kramer found a clue in Saudi Arabia, a region known as the homeland of gold, which currently has 55 gold mines. He believes that the Hijaz Mountains in Saudi Arabia could be the key to finding the river Pishon and the Garden of Eden. Kramer discovered that the Wadi Rum in Jordan contains non-native rocks, likely from the distant Hijaz Mountains. This shows that in the past, there might have been a river connecting what is now a desert region. This discovery also supports his theory that the Garden of Eden might be located in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, possibly near the Hijaz Mountains in Saudi Arabia. These archaeologists' beliefs aside, according to the Bible, the Garden of Eden was a picture-perfect place with unique scenery and crystal-clear rivers. The Bible says that Eden was located in the east, and that it was a place with no wrong or sin. The first humans, Adam and Eve, lived there, content and happy with every animal species you could possibly think of. The atmosphere was always peaceful, and the view was colorful. The garden had four rivers, Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. The weather in Eden was always as perfect as the scenery. It was never too hot and never too cold. It has been rumored to have felt like spring all the time, with flowers always blooming and fruits always ripe. According to the Bible, the garden had every kind of tree that was healthy, fruitful, beautiful to look at, and good to eat, including the trees of life and the knowledge of good and evil. Combining what the Bible has said about the Garden of Eden with the findings of Dr. Smith, David Rohl, and archaeologist Joel Kramer, it makes people wonder, where really is this garden located? Devout Christians are convinced without a doubt that the Garden of Eden was a real place on earth, while others think it symbolizes being spiritually complete. But no matter how hard people have looked, they haven't been able to back their discoveries up with concrete evidence that it was the same location Adam and Eden first lived in. Many have guessed where it might be, suggesting places in the Middle East, Africa, and even the United States of America. But the mystery of where the Garden of Eden remains unsolved. Some experts think that maybe the Garden of Eden was destroyed a long time ago by a natural disaster like an earthquake or a flood. Others believe that it was covered by water. Honestly, both opinions are very plausible, seeing as the Garden of Eden would probably have been wiped out of existence centuries ago. One of the most common ideas is that the Garden of Eden was in Mesopotamia, which is now part of Iraq. People think this because the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Iraq are thought to be the same rivers mentioned in the Bible as being in the Garden of Eden. Mesopotamia is also known to be one of the oldest places where humans lived, according to ancient artifacts that have been found by archaeologists. Another common perception is that the Garden of Eden was in Africa, near the Nile River. In the Bible, two rivers called Pishon and Gihon were mentioned, and some people believe they are what have become the River Nile and its smaller rivers. Like Mesopotamia, Africa is also where some of the oldest human bones have been found, so some archaeologists are convinced these bones can be traced back to the time of Adam and Eve. But to counter this belief, according to Dr. Smith's team, the Garden of Eden is in northern Iraq, near the borders of Turkey and Iran. As you would expect, those aren't the only guesses of where the Garden of Eden is. Terje Stortelen thinks it might be in Lebanon, according to the Book of Ezekiel. He claims that the Garden of Eden and the forests of Lebanon are all connected. His belief is backed by ancient stories that sometimes mention Lebanon as a possible place where the Garden of Eden was. The earliest stories from Sumeria, for example, talk about a special place that looks like what the Bible described as the Garden of Eden, being in the mountains in Lebanon. Now let's talk about how certain unpopular religious groups think the Garden of Eden is in a place that is special to their religion, and not in the Middle East that is unique to the Abrahamic religions. Some early leaders of the Mormon religion claim the Garden of Eden was in Jackson County, Missouri. The 20th Century Panacea Society believed it was in Bedford, England, while preacher L.V.E. Calloway thought it was near the Apalachicola River in Florida, close to Bristol. Some people even suggest it might be in Jerusalem. Christopher Columbus, when he first saw South America during his third journey to the Americas in 1498, believed he had reached the earthly paradise. Tse Tai claimed that the Garden of Eden was in what is now known as Xinjiang, in his book The Creation, the Garden of Eden, and the Origin of the Chinese. Did you know there has been some speculation about a gate found in Israel that might pinpoint the exact location of the garden? In Tel Lachish National Park, next to Mount Hebron, there is a shrine dating back to the earliest temple, which was built in the 8th century BCE. This finding supports the biblical accounts of King Hezekiah's attempts to outlaw local worship customs. Working with the Jerusalem Heritage and Environmental Protection Ministry, the Nature and Parks Authority, and the Israel Antiquities Authority, the excavation took place earlier in the year. The goal of this excavation was to learn more about the old building and advance the development of the historic park. According to the head of the excavation, this gate is the biggest one discovered in Israel from the First Temple era. The recent excavation aimed to uncover more of a gate that was only partly revealed a few decades ago in the northern area. The gate's size shows that Lachish was an important city, according to records from history and archaeology. Emily, who is leading the excavation, says that this is important, and that Jerusalem is the only place where this kind of gate is found. In the Bible, the city gates were where important people like elders, judges, leaders, and kings would meet. During the excavation, researchers found benches that these important people might have sat on. The Gate of Lachish is 4 meters tall and measures 24.50 by 24.50 meters. The main road of the city goes between 6 rooms, 3 on each side. Emily talked about some of the things they found at the gate and in the rooms. In the first room, they found benches with armrests and lots of things like jars, grain, scoops, and jar handles with the names of important people or with the king's seal on them. 2 of the handles had a seal with a horn on them, which means they belonged to the king of Hebron. With all of these conflicting speculations and unverified findings, we can almost agree with the people who think the Garden of Eden is not a real place and it's just an idea. They think that the story of Adam and Eve is merely meant to teach a lesson about following instructions and finding peace. According to them, the Garden of Eden represents a time when people were innocent and free of sin, but when they left, they lost that innocence. But we need to remember that in the Bible, God didn't just create the garden, but He gave it a name. Just because we haven't found it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. What the Bible's prophets have said about the Garden of Eden. Today's generation of researchers and archaeologists are not the only ones who have talked about the Garden of Eden. Even the prophets in the Bible have also referenced the Holy Garden. The Tree of Life, which was right in the center of the garden, was mentioned in Genesis and the book of Revelation, chapter 22, verses 1 to 3. In the book of Revelation, Jesus talks about the Tree of Life again. The Tree of Life that Adam wasn't allowed to eat from after he sinned is the same Tree of Life that we will be allowed to eat from forever. It is no surprise the garden is so sought after because finding it is very important. First, it shows that this mythical garden really existed, which has been a topic of many stories and theories for a long time. Secondly, it gives us a new way to picture the story of Adam and Eve being kicked out of the garden, including where they passed through to exit the garden, and spots they slept or feasted at. The recent discovery of the garden has raised new questions about the story of Adam and Eve and what it truly means, making scholars want to take an in-depth look at the Bible again to better understand it. Finding the Garden of Eden could also help us learn more than just information about the area. We could learn about the people who lived there a long time ago. We might also learn about how people started farming and gardening by looking at the religious stories about the Garden of Eden. Another reason why it is very important to find out about the Garden of Eden is because it might have important environmental significance to our modern-day climate. The plants that were found in the cave are different from any plants that exist in our time. This could help us find out how to make crops that are resistant to diseases and can grow in different kinds of weather. It could also help protect the special ecosystem in Cave Hill and the area around it. But even after lots of research, there's still no solid proof that the Garden of Eden existed in history. It doesn't end there. Over millions of years, the Earth has changed a lot because of natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, and erosion. These inevitable events could have destroyed any evidence that the Garden of Eden was real or eroded the location of the garden to a new site through continental drift. This idea is also supported by what we know about human evolution. Human evolution has been happening for millions of years, and it could also have a hand in our difficulty in finding the garden. Some people think the Garden of Eden can be found by following the descriptions in the Bible and comparing them to what the landscape was like at that time. According to the Bible, a river came out of Eden and watered the garden before splitting into 4 rivers. One of these rivers is called Pishon, and it flows through the land of Havilah, which is rich in gold. There is also onyx and crystal there, and the gold is very good. The second river is called Gihon, and it goes through the land of Cush. The third river comes from the east of Asher and is called the Tigris, and the fourth river is the Euphrates. The most famous Bible scholar, Rashi, says that Pishon is the Nile River. He explains that the word Pishon means to gush forth and overflow, which describes the Nile River because it overflows and waters Egypt. Another idea is that Pishon comes from the Hebrew word pishtan, which means flax. This might refer to the flax industry in ancient Egypt that was fed by the Nile River. The ancient Egyptians used to mine gold and precious stones, especially in a place called Nubia, which is in southern Egypt and Sudan. So according to this idea, the place called Havilah might be somewhere along the Nile, maybe in Egypt or Sudan. There is the opinion that the Pishon River might actually be the Ganges River, which goes into the Bay of Bengal after going through Bangladesh and India. This idea matches with what Yonatan ben Uziel, who translated the Bible into Aramaic, said. He translated the land of Havilah as Hindki, which is an Aramaic word for India. It's interesting to know that Josephus, an ancient historian, thought the Pishon River was the Indus River, which also goes through India. Some parts of the Indus River connect to a place called Havilian, which is between Pakistan and Kashmir, along the upper Indus River. The land of Kush is usually thought to be Ethiopia, and the Gihon River is thought to be the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile starts at Lake Tana in Ethiopia and meets the White Nile in Khartoum, Sudan. Together they make one river that goes all the way to Egypt. R. David Kimchi, who wrote about the Bible in the 12th century, said that Gihon means to diverge. This could be because many smaller rivers come off the Blue Nile in Ethiopia. The third river, Hypotheses, is usually thought to be the Tigris River, which starts in southeastern Turkey, goes through Iraq, and then goes into the Persian Gulf. In the Bible, Daniel talks about standing by the banks of the Hypotheses River when he had one of his visions while he was living in Babylonia. So it's clear that the Hypotheses River is in the area of ancient Babylonia, which is now Iraq. During the time of the Second Temple, a wise man named Yonatan ben Uziel translated the word Hiddekel into the Aramaic word Diglas. It's quite fascinating that even today, the Tigris River is referred to as Dikla in Turkish and Dila in Arabic. According to this translation, the location mentioned in the verse, Ashur, refers to ancient Assyria, which was centered around the upper Tigris River. The fourth river, Parat, is identified as the Euphrates River, which runs almost parallel to the Tigris. Together, these two rivers represented most of the Fertile Crescent, which was the cradle of civilization in ancient times. The name Euphrates is derived from the Greek version of the Old Persian Ufratu and the Akkadian Puratu. Even today, the river is called Al-Furat in Arabic. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers were cherished and very important in ancient history. They provided water for agriculture, transportation, and trade, supporting the growth of early civilizations. The region surrounding these rivers, known as Mesopotamia, was home to some of the earliest human societies. It's mind-blowing to see how the names of these rivers have existed without changing over thousands of years. The Euphrates River is mentioned later in God's promise to Abraham concerning the land of Israel. It is one of the defining borders of the Promised Land. We're also found out that at one time, Jewish civilization had spread so wide that members of the tribe of Reuben were living as far as the banks of the Euphrates River. While the identification of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers is straightforward and widely accepted, determining the locations of the other two rivers mentioned in the Bible poses more challenges and remains a topic of debate among scholars. The verse provides more details about the Pishon River compared to the others, but the information itself is quite unclear, making it even more difficult to identify its precise location. The three main Abrahamic religions and their religious gardens. All three main Abrahamic religions tell stories about the ancient garden. Let's talk about each one. In Jewish tradition, the Garden of Eden is seen as both a heavenly and an earthly place. The heavenly Garden of Eden is where the soul of a good person goes after they die. The earthly Garden of Eden is where Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God, made Adam and Eve. The Jewish tradition is also convinced that all humans come from Adam and Eve. According to Jewish law written in the Talmud, this garden was in Eden. The garden, also known as Gan in Hebrew, is described in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Jewish Torah and the Christian Bible. It was a perfect paradise where Adam and Eve didn't feel pain, get sick, feel scared, or die until they disobeyed Yahweh's rule. Yahweh told them not to eat fruit from the tree of knowledge, but then the devil, who appeared as a snake, convinced Eve to eat the fruit. Some Jewish scholars think the snake represents humans' tendency to do things that hurt themselves. The snake told Eve that if she ate the fruit, she wouldn't die, and she would know good and evil, just like God. Eve ate the fruit and gave some to Adam, so she is blamed for being the first sinner. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they suddenly became aware of their emotions and physical senses. Before that, they were innocent and didn't know what was good or evil. The Jewish view of the ancient garden is different from what other religions believe. Let's see what other religions say about this mythical place. When Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they suddenly understood their emotions and physical feelings. Before that, they were innocent and didn't know what was good or bad. The Jewish idea of the ancient garden is different from what other religions believe. Let's take a look at what other religions say about this legendary place. In Islam, Jannat Aden, which means Gardens of Eden, is part of heaven. It's the fourth level of heaven, and it's symbolized by big pearls. Aden is a garden where good, patient, and pure people will live in beautiful mansions. There are perfectly clean streams and angels in the gardens. Adam fell from this place to earth, landing on Serendib. In the Quran, it is simply called the garden. There are many mentions of the garden in the Quran, while the Garden of Eden, without the word Aden, is usually seen as the fourth layer of Islamic heaven. It's not always thought of as the place where Adam lived. In Islamic teachings, Jannat is believed to be better than any other garden in heaven. According to a saying of the Prophet, the Gardens of Eden are described as something that no one has ever seen or imagined. Even though the Quran doesn't say a lot about this paradise, some verses describe it. It says that in the Gardens of Eden, there are prophets, sincere believers, martyrs, and those who fought for Islam. Unlike the Bible, the Quran only mentions one tree in Eden. This tree is called the tree of immortality, and it never decays. Allah told Adam and Eve not to eat from this tree, but the Quran doesn't talk about a tree of knowledge like the Bible does. Some people believe that the Garden of Eden is just a story and can't be found. They say this because of how the rivers are described in the Bible, like the Pishon, Gihon, Tigris, and Euphrates. They think it's impossible to find the garden because of this. Some liberal PhD scholars who agree with the anthropological perspective believe that humans created their gods in their own image. They think that the Garden of Eden is a story based on earlier Mesopotamian stories about the city gardens of the gods and goddesses in ancient Sumer, which is now modern-day Iraq. According to some myths, the gods created cities so they could live in them. They could die if they were killed because they had bodies made of flesh, and they built city gardens so they could grow food for themselves because they could starve to death. The Sumerians called the floodplain of Lower Mesopotamia, where these cities and gardens were built, Eden. And Eden was the garden of the gods. The Tigris and Euphrates, two of Eden's rivers, were used as irrigation channels to water the gardens. Over time, the gods grew tired of taking care of their city gardens, so they decided to create humans to do the work for them. Humans built irrigation canals, planted crops, harvested them, and then offered the produce from the Gardens of Eden to the gods to eat in temples located in the cities that the gods had built for themselves before humans were created. But the gods didn't create humans out of love to have companionship, as taught by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Instead, they made humans to be their agricultural slaves, to be ruthlessly exploited by them. The work in the Gardens of Eden was extremely hard and exhausting. But what's strange is that the gods would never kick out humans, their slaves, from the Gardens of Eden. If they did, it would mean that the gods would have to work in the gardens themselves to get their own food. This was something they really didn't want to do, which is why they made humans to be their slaves and do all the hard, dirty work for them. The gods also didn't give humans godlike powers or immortality. Why was that? Well, humans were created to be agricultural slaves, to grow food and give it to the gods. In the Mesopotamian way of thinking, the gods don't grow their own food or feed themselves. That's supposed to be done by humans. If humans were allowed to become immortal and become gods, then who would grow food for the gods and feed them in the Gardens of Eden? That aside, The story of the Garden of Eden in Genesis rejects Mesopotamian myths that explain where and why humans were created. The original stories that Genesis's Garden of Eden is based on are the city gardens of Eden in ancient Sumer. In these cities, each one had its own garden belonging to a god or goddess where food was grown for the deity to eat. So Genesis's Garden of Eden doesn't have just one source. It's actually based on many different city gardens found in ancient Sumer. Despite the various theories and interpretations of the Garden of Eden, there is one important truth out of all the many deductions regarding the Garden of Eden. God has made it so that the purest people will be able to eat from the tree of life forever, no matter where the garden is or whether we ever find it or not. Whatever happens, remember to live in righteousness so that, at the end of the universe's existence, you'll be one of the fortunate believers to ascend with the Savior on the day of his second coming and enjoy eternal life in paradise with God. What's your opinion on the exploration of the Garden of Eden? Which one of the explorers, from Dr. Smith and David Roll to archaeologist Joel Kramer, do you think had really found the Garden of Eden? Let us know in the comments. While you're still here, don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and share it with everyone. We would also totally appreciate it if you subscribe to our channel and check out our other videos. Until next time, stay curious.